Go teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Holy cats.
Yep, that's the leader of the free world.
I mean, that was the most incredible video, and it reminded me of my favorite clip that Rush used to play all the time about Ted Kennedy. I'm sure we don't have it loaded in the system, but you guys remember when Ted Kennedy's like, an old Kennedy, and, and Rush played it over and over and over again. God bless Rush Limbaugh. I wish he was still around.
I feel like it's been a long time since we just like honed in on the weekly insanity of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
But like, you got to hear this one more time. Let's just listen to one more time. Wolf, can we load this one more time? Like, the audio alone.
You hear that, and it's just like, well, that's where we are.
Oh.
That's where we are.
Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
What? Okay. Like, what? Honestly,
unless you want to get the benefit?
What is he taught? Like, what was it supposed to be? What was that supposed to be?
That's the thing is, it's usually at moments like that, if you're surrounded by people who care about you, they ask you questions like, you know, are you smelling toast? Can you feel your fingertips and toes? You
draw
take
a clock.
You know, like you draw a clock. Have a sip of water. Start checking vitals.
Sit down, Dad.
Yeah, I mean, like that is a very
place for mom.
Yeah, that's a very concerning type of situation. But
they're straight up running that guy.
They're running that guy.
They're straight up running that guy.
I have to tell you about this game-changing product I use before a night out with drinks. It's called Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have a Z-Biotics before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently come in and record Ruthless without worry. Super Bowl Sunday is right around the corner. Because of Z-Biotics, I'm confident I can enjoy the game without worrying about how productive I'll be at work come Monday morning. Go to zbiotics.com/ruthless to get 15% off your first order when you use Ruthless at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So remember, head to zbiotics.com/ruthless and use the code RUTHLESS at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
Amazing. And so this show is going to be fantastic. Part of that is the reason that they're running that guy. And the guest we have today is Charlie Spiering, who wrote just an incredible book about Kamala Harris. Called Amateur Hour.
Mm-hmm. Perfect name.
That you have to read. You have to check it out because it explains, through your inference throughout reading about Kamala Harris, why they're running this guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think
it's a dilemma.
The average American sits back and they look at that and they're like, "That's the only way you guys can lose." Right?
Because as bad as that is, she is even worse.
She's even worse.
Imagine that.
And that's the thing that we endeavor to provide here in the Ruthless Variety program is some level of detail as to why irrational decision making is made, and this is the ultimate. Like we get a lot of that in terms of like legislation, in terms of like Senate candidates, House candidates, things like that. This is the ultimate irrational decision making. Like let's put the guy out that 60% of the American people can't do the job.
Yeah.
But because the alternative, we're cooked.
It's incredible.
We think we can convince enough people to vote for a guy who we know can't do the job, but I'm not sure we can convince the
It's
majority of
incredible.
people to vote for the alternative.
incredible.
Especially when they know the rest of the story. Anyway, Charlie Spiering, a good friend of the program, is on later in the show to talk about that. Clearly, the news this week is the New Hampshire primary. Let's go upshots. Smug, like, what's your upshot of this deal?
So I actually did like a little bit of a deep dive before today's episode, and I crunched some numbers. I looked at some data because there's going to be a lot of talk about, okay, what can we extrapolate on this based on previous New Hampshire primaries? Because there was a talk of, is Iowa representative? Because turnout was lower. Was turnout lower just because of whether it was?
It was
lower.
under
It was
15.
because-
It was
yeah,
14.4%. It was a wildly low
Yeah.
number.
So we saw in the New Hampshire primary, it's projected you've got about 323,000 people cast their vote.
Which is a record.
Huge number.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, in 2016, it was 260,000.
I mean, and think about that. At the time in 2016, everybody discussed what maximum turnout looked like in the era of Trump, and they were like, wow, this is going to be a very different ball game.
Yeah.
And they thought that was kind of the high watermark. This just blew right through that.
Yeah. And then you look at 2012, 2008, and 2000. Those are all about 230, 240,000. 2016 hits 260,000. 2024, 320,000,
Yeah,
right?
wow. It's a big
just
number.
huge
huge.
turnout to begin with.
Huge.
And then you look at the percentages that the winner takes down, right? So in 2000, you had McCain won the New Hampshire primary 48.5%. 2008, McCain won 37%. 2012, Romney won 39%. 2016, Trump wins with 35%. And then 2024, Trump wins 54.5%.
Yeah, now
It's a convincing win.
Now, no question. But contextualizing all of that, the one thing that wasn't totally anticipated was the consolidation of the field before the New Hampshire primary.
Yep.
In each and every one of those races that you're talking about, maybe not the McCain-Bush situation back in 2000,
the
which
wild
was
thing is
basically...
there was still a bundle there. There was like Alan Keyes was in there.
Yeah, I mean, there were still people,
Yeah,
no
totally.
question. But like this one had credible candidates from the jump. And the fact that, you had former vice presidents and senators and people who could do the job. It wasn't
That's
Alan Keyes. I mean, it was like, with all due respect to Alan Keyes, it wasn't him. It was like there are people who are legitimate presidential candidates all the way through here that are all gone.
It was
that vote.
yeah. So this was an extremely unique New Hampshire primary because of that. You didn't have as wide a field as you typically have at this point. Iowa did a far better job winnowing the field than I can remember.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it just cut the field down, and then you had DeSantis drop even before New Hampshire.
And that's the whole point, by the way, of Iowa. Everybody was like, oh, is it representative? Oh, is it this, that? No. It's about whether you can compete.
Yep.
And whether you can compete is a significant aspect to whether or not you earn that nomination. And there's an awful lot of people who got out either before or immediately after it.
Yeah. And I think what is really interesting about this dynamic is, so you had DeSantis drop, very, very close to the date of the primary, right? So it was essentially a 3-person race until like 36 hours
Totally.
before votes are being
Yeah,
cast.
there was no chance of like a reconsolidation or a major shift.
Yeah.
It was very, very quick.
So my theory right now is the Nikki Haley campaign is thinking, we've heard for years on the Republican side of, wow, would 2016 have been different if one of these candidates had been able to go head to head? If it had not been at the end, you had like Kasich and Cruz, and then Rubio was staying in too long, and there was never a head to head against Trump, because the whole theory was, oh, in a head to head, a conservative Republican candidate could defeat Trump.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get proof either way of whether we conclusively see a result of that theory out of
Not
New
in
Hampshire.
16.
No, we didn't see it in 16. I mean, out of last night. I don't
Oh,
think,
okay.
or of New Hampshire. I don't think we really conclusively saw a head-to-head.
Yeah.
And my theory is that the Nikki Haley campaign is seeing this as like, maybe South Carolina at the very least.
It's our home state.
More,
Two-term governor.
Two-term governor can be more of a place that they can try to display what a head-to-head would look like. Because for so long, conservatives said, I wonder what if there had been that head-to-head. And looking at her fundraising schedule, I mean, these are some of the top Republican donors that you could hope to have, that she has lined up for events, which is why, there was this random speculation of, is she going to drop out if she doesn't win New Hampshire? I saw the, fundraising events she has lined up. She will have financial resources to weather the next 4 weeks at the very least.
And the Trump campaign is doing, look, this is the inside baseball that we let you in on. The Trump campaign is doing an admirable job of trying to close the door here.
Incredible job.
They're going to anybody and everybody who has a microphone and a following and saying, like, okay, now are we good? Like, get on board for the big win because this is going to happen. And now's your time.
And to me, like, the most convincing thing that Trump has accomplished is when you saw him giving his victory speech in New Hampshire, it was basically a lineup behind him of people who had run against him. And
well, that's what he does best.
It's
the full bore on the floor, right?
To show voters that it's convincing. It's like, listen, everyone's getting in line. Everyone's getting in line. So that's the Trump campaign's focus essentially is we want to make the case clear for folks that this is a wrap. This is over. Let's focus on Joe Biden. And I think the Nikki campaign's whole premise right now would be, let's test the theory of the head-to-head.
Yeah, I think that's right. Johnny, what's your...
Well, I think that obviously Nikki has financial resources. Obviously, she has a very, very talented team across the map, including in New Hampshire. And I think the fact that Trump won so convincingly in New Hampshire is a testament to the strength of Trump's organization. We've said it over and over again on this program, and you'll hear us say it until the end of this campaign.
I love seeing the angry tweets at Ashbrook for being like, why do you keep saying these?
Oh, dude.
Nice,
well, can I take that up on your behalf for a minute? Look,
keep attacking Ashbrook, people.
Please keep attacking Ashbrook. I'm not trying to convince you out of that.
People are conducting full-on seminars in my mentions.
But here's the thing that we do on the Variety program. We tell you the truth as we see it. There is an awful lot what I call critters. And the critters they get in whatever camp they feel like they have the most benefits themselves. And at the end, they scurry like critters to whatever camp they believe is going to ultimately win. Now, you can go back and check the tape on all of that. Nobody ever does. Nobody holds anybody accountable. But they've been all over the map up until the point where now they're all like, well, Donald Trump is God's savior. And that's where we're at. Look, we're going to give you on this program exactly what we think the situation is all the way through. When Ron DeSantis launched his campaign on Twitter Spaces, we had a lot to say about that. We felt like that was a real problem and a harbinger of things to come, and we went off on it. We got roasted on Twitter by a bunch of you who listen to this program, but we were right.
On Main Street, local credit unions and community banks are the heart of our small towns. So when these institutions are united in opposition to the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill, Congress should listen. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill favors corporate megastores like Walmart and Target, shifting costs and risks unfairly onto the credit unions, community banks, and the 135 million customers they serve. Tell Congress to protect America's credit unions and community banks and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Visit electronicpaymentscoalition.org to take action.
We told you from the start that watch out for the Trump campaign. They're doing things differently this time around. And I think what you saw in New Hampshire is proof of that, because they were neck and neck with Nikki. There was a thought that Trump was going to lose New Hampshire ahead of Iowa, and that was a legitimate possibility. But what they did in New Hampshire was they found every single Republican voter that they could come up with, and they put him in the bank, and they worked it the way that you always are supposed to work it. And in a night when you had record turnout, it worked out for them.
And that's I do encourage the folks to continue attacking Ashbrook on Twitter. I think
No, that's a
great
smart
idea.
thing to do.
Go for it.
But
You ought
but it
to.
doesn't matter how many times he brings up the stone cold fact that this is a very different Trump campaign. They're extremely organized. They have very talented professionals who know how to conduct an actual reputable turnout operation, and we've now seen that twice.
Yeah, listen, Susie
Like, at
Wiles
some
and Chris
point-
Lasavita are a real deal.
Yeah, at some point, people
And-
are going to
and-
recognize, and Alex Lacham, who's his early state director,
Yep.
a guy who I know is an absolute professional,
Yep.
attention to detail like none other. I mean, these folks are very serious about what they do. And so I think there's been this kind of like characterization of that, like, well, because Trump, when he's in front of the mic, it's like free flowing and it's fun. So the campaign itself might be that. You've got the candidate at the top, Trump, who will have these rallies and he's free flowing and everything. And then what you do not see is out in the field, there's killers out there just marching along, grinding it out.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So the only reservation I have in the following take is in context with what you're saying, in that they are focused. They've figured out how to win the day and how to win the next election. My biggest concern about the Trump campaign from day one was that 46% ceiling and whether or not it was possible for Donald J. Trump, not the movement, not the policies, but whatever, he's ubiquitously known and everyone has an opinion about him. Is it possible for him to change minds to get to a majority status to win a general election? I remain concerned about that. Part of that New Hampshire situation was the concern. Like, it's a great primary talking point for Donald Trump and everybody else to say, like, we consolidated conservatives. We consolidated like 5 of 5, which means like the most likely primary voters overwhelmingly chose Donald Trump. The most conservative parts of the electorate overwhelmingly chose Donald Trump. The center right and center left did not. Also overwhelmingly. Also overwhelmingly. So in the context of a primary, that's terrific news for Donald Trump. Does it give me some concern about all of the concerns I had in a general election going into this? You bet it does. It validates it. It makes me more concerned about whether or not they've fixed any sort of... I mean, the conventional wisdom in conservative circles right now is that Joe Biden is so weak, so anemic, so old, and has such a bad record on things that people care about that it doesn't matter. I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I think you're bringing up a really good point. And for me, my macro takeaway from New Hampshire was, I mean, we all saw the numbers. We all saw, Trump won. But looking at the numbers and the themes, I think, that lead to this outcome, my thinking is more of, okay, so Trump's victory in my mind is predicated upon he made the issue about what primary voters care about. He has the ability to sway what Republican primary voters care about. Because if, like the Nikki campaign has tried to predicate, this is about is who can beat Biden the most. Like, you frequently hear her say, if you look at polling of all the candidates, I beat Biden by the biggest margin. But Trump has made it so that that is not the primary concern of Republican primary voters.
Yeah.
That's not what they are looking for.
Well,
in a candidate.
and conversely, I mean, I think I tweeted this out on Tuesday night. I think
this number
I thought from the beginning, the one argument that the field, not necessarily Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or anybody, but the field needed to win, was that Donald Trump was not a viable general election candidate. And if you look at the exit polling out of New Hampshire, only 15% or so even factored that in to their decision making. And out of that 15%, people thought he was a more formidable candidate than anybody else in the field. If you're not winning that question, what are we doing here?
Yep.
Because that is the only question that Republicans have to ask themselves. I mean, look, ideology let's just be honest. In the context of a primary, and I think I saw an awesome La Savita quote that was like, she was a blank canvas and we had a bucket of paint, where it's like everybody's now convinced that Nikki Haley is some like liberal corporatist. Meanwhile, she was the UN ambassador for Donald Trump.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Conservative.
But like on the issues, there's not a lot of difference between any of these candidates.
Right.
The question is how they're defined and how they're not. And she was defined with a huge segment of the New Hampshire voter base that ultimately voted for Donald Trump as like a corporatist, kind of left of center Republican. In reality, what they had to convince in order to win that was she's a regular Republican, believes the same things you do. The difference is that she's got a 15-point lead on Joe Biden and he's neck and neck. And they couldn't do that.
Yep.
And I'm not blaming the Nikki Haley campaign because nobody's been able to. Ron DeSantis tried it for 6 months and couldn't do it. Mike Pence tried to do it. Chris Christie tried to do it. I mean, the luminaries of the Republican Party over the last 10 years have all tried to do it and haven't been able to do it. So it's no fault of their own. But that's if you're going to see any change, that's the only one that matters, in my view.
Yeah, that's it. That is the heart of it right there. And to me, it seems like the only way to overtake Trump would be to make the electorate care about that issue. And none of these candidates have been able to.
Well, I think there's another way to overtake Trump is just to be better than him at his own game, and nobody is.
Nobody can do that. But that's not. I mean, look, it's not Nikki Haley's game, and to her credit, she's the only one that didn't try to play his game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only reason why she's left standing is that she's run her own campaign with her own message. She didn't try to be Trump light.
Right.
She tried to be Nikki Haley.
Right.
And we said it. Look, when she came in here immediately after she announced her presidential ambitions, and she came in here at our old desk, which is embarrassing, by the way. I can't believe we had her in here on that. And all of us at the end of it came away with saying, like, whoa, there's something a little different. There's something a little different. It seems much more authentic than the Nikki Haley that we've been publicly scheduled to receive, where she's reading somebody's talking points and doing somebody's deal. Like, it felt like it was a lot more authentic. She ran her whole campaign like that.
Yeah.
And, I think Ron DeSantis got there at the end of the campaign where he was doing that same thing. If he started the campaign where she started the campaign, the authentic Ron DeSantis, which is nowhere near what the authentic Nikki Haley is like, he could have had a different outcome too.
But it seems like she might be sticking around a little bit.
I think she's going to be. Let's put up the results of the New Hampshire. This is graphic 1. So what you're going to see here, it's an 11-point lead, or an 11-point win, which is big. And in the context that you put it in, the biggest in recent history.
Yeah.
Any Republican over 50 in New Hampshire.
Huge.
That has been a game over set match type deal. The difference here is the consolidation of the field put Nikki Haley up at 43, which also in all of the results that you read, the winners weren't at 43.
Yeah. And so that I thought that was really interesting. And I think that's the whole dynamic is the argument that the Haley campaign needs to make in the next 4 weeks is there's been all this talk of, this candidate, if they could have gotten a one-on-one showdown with Trump, they could have. This is it. They've gotten what they've asked for. Every candidate dreamed of having the one-on-one against Trump. They've all thought, you put me one-on-one with Trump, I could take him.
Right.
That it's going to be South Carolina.
Yeah, totally. So here's the clip of Haley's speech. If we can just do a quick clip, number 2.
Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over.
It's not
Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
So there's good arguments on both sides of this discussion. If you're a Republican who is absolutely dead set on getting Joe Biden out of the White House, of which we consider ourselves one of those, there's two paths that we're discussing here. The first is the guy won the first two. He won in hostile territory here where people could credibly say it was the best chance for him to get knocked off, and he won by double digits. And it's time to get about a general election. That is one set of arguments, which I think does have credibility.
This is
Absolutely.
what the Trump campaign is pushing really hard right now.
Yeah, but I think it's a good argument. The other side of this is Nikki Haley's point of view. One, she's going home to South Carolina. 4 weeks from now. If she's going to put up a game-changing performance in her home state, is probably a pretty good place to start. And you ought to see what that looks like. Secondly, and I think this is like a larger debate that I'm just not sure how I come down on, to be honest, which is it's a debate that Democrats ought to have and don't, where you have an 80-year-old nominee, and in our case, one with 91 indictments and all kinds of court trials, and you saw the shift in media coverage, by the way, yesterday, the day that he won New Hampshire. It immediately changed from like process stories about the Trump campaign.
I'm glad you brought this up because this gets to my
to like all of a sudden, you know, all the bad things and realization why you shouldn't vote for not. So the entire establishment of this country, whether it's media, entertainment, higher education, corporate interests or whatever, are the debate shifts, and it shifted yesterday.
Yep.
Right?
But it didn't shift all the way.
It didn't. Let me just finish the thought. Her point being, if you don't have an alternative, if you have somebody with 0 delegates, if something happens here, what do you do? What would you do? I mean, I'm sure there's a process at the RNC, and I think this is a very unlikely, let me just say at the outset, this is a very unlikely set of circumstances, but it's like going into an NFL season without a backup quarterback.
So interestingly, I think this has been when I earlier brought up the point that Trump has been able to make the issue that Republican primary voters care about not be who is up the most on Joe Biden, right? I think part of what's made it so difficult for all of his opponents is when these charges come in and like, they look like absolute trash, just like trumped up garbage.
Yeah,
just get Trump stuff. You know, these people who ran on "I will charge Trump with crimes," getting elected on that, and then charging him with just absurd charges.
Right.
I think that you saw in the polling, that's when DeSantis's numbers started to descend rapidly and Trump's started to ascend rapidly.
Yeah.
He made the issue Republican primary voters seeing that, yes, this system is screwed up. Right. And that's what got him the win the first time is, you know, a large body of this country saying that, like, these institutions, everything that we were told is supposed to be on our side is not working. It's screwy, and they're actually against us. And I think that has really powered him to these two victories because he's made the issue that Republican primary voters care about, that the system is screwed, they've screwed me, and they've screwed Trump, and I'm going to stand with him.
So I understand all of that you're saying. Let me just say quickly, I get why the Trump campaign is saying we need to be over, we need to consolidate, we need to focus on Biden. That makes perfect sense from their standpoint. Of course they're going to be saying that. I understand why Nikki Haley, who actually scored above 40 in New Hampshire, is saying, we're taking this to South Carolina, her home state. She's won statewide there twice. We're going to continue on. She's got money. She's got talent. I understand why she's saying that. Both sides are allowed to participate in the process. Let me give you a perspective on why it might actually be beneficial for Trump to have this continue. Because a conflict between Donald Trump and another Republican has to be covered by the press.
Yep.
And it actually makes Trump look pretty good that he dominates his Republican opponents in Iowa and New Hampshire and whatever other state that he's running against.
It also prolongs the onslaught against him.
It runs the clock.
Yeah.
And the second that he is the nominee and there is no other conflict among Republicans, the conversation in the mainstream media turns entirely from something about presidential politics and who wants a border wall and who wants lower taxes, directly from that to criminal trial.
Yep.
And
That's a very
the
good
presidential coverage from the mainstream media will be wall-to-wall criminal trial, start to finish.
The media coverage, you're right. It'll go instantly from Republican primary to attack Trump.
So I think he's in a situation right now where you've got, 75 network embeds headed to South Carolina to talk about South Carolina, to say, well, maybe Nikki Haley still has a chance. And at the end of the day, Trump probably wins there. But you have conflict they must cover that is about presidential politics. And they say they want to talk about Biden. I understand why they want to talk about Biden. They are talking about Biden.
Well, and so is everybody else.
So
I mean, the thing that they've got going for them is that there's heated conflict in Congress anyway. It's not like there's not a criticism of Biden that's being levied currently. I mean, the man's numbers are in the low 30s. You know what I mean? Like, this old bastard's been taking heat from every corner forever. And it's the one safe place for Republicans to be during the course of a primary. So you're going to have a huge echo chamber of Republicans who are focused fire on Biden regardless. I understand. Look, from a practical standpoint, look, these guys are really smart. Mm-hmm. And they want this thing over. They want to put it in the bank, and they want to start looking forward. Reality is they got a long way to go to do that. They're going to have to beat Nikki Haley convincingly in South Carolina in order to do that. And they're going to have to do it in such a way to make a case that Super Tuesday doesn't look like a hodgepodge of victories. Remember, guys like Marco Rubio won states in Super Tuesday. You know, I mean, Super Tuesday expands the map in a different way where your resources aren't such that you can actually dominate each campaign the way that Trump has dominated Iowa and dominated New Hampshire. It's like a full map of stuff. And so if you're looking at this from Nikki Haley's standpoint, I look at it in two ways. The first way is we got in the 40s. And we're in a head-to-head, which, to your point, is something that everybody speculated about. What does that look like in a national context? The second thing is second place a bad spot to be here? A clear second place, a bad spot to be here in an environment that is totally unprecedented in American politics, where the nominee for the Democrats may not be on the ballot, and there are 91 indictments and an actuarial table that is ticking on our own nominee. Like, does second place sound like a bad situation to be in? Because they're going to have to go around it one way or another. I don't even know what the process is. I've spent my life in politics. I worked at the Republican National Committee. I don't know what the process would be to replace a nominee. I don't even know how you deal with that. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen at all. And by the looks of Donald Trump, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Well, but some people tried in 2016 in October.
Mike Lee.
Well, Mike Lee tried to remove Trump from the ballot at the convention, and there were others who tried to remove Trump from the ballot.
Well, this is you're talking about the Paul Ryan Reince Priebus play at the end.
Yeah, and that was stopped.
You know what? Here, like, I'm glad you brought
We
this
we
up.
could talk about it in another
No,
time.
no, no. I don't think we should. I think we should just let it go. The reason you listen to Ruthless is because you get inside scoop. You get inside scoop. You know why that didn't go forward?
I do know why that didn't go forward.
Smug, do you know why that didn't go forward?
I stood for President Trump. Make sure it wouldn't happen.
I think that's right. There was conventional wisdom in October of 2016 that when the Access Hollywood tapes came out, that the party ought to basically unendorse and walk away from Trump. Paul Ryan at the point, Reince Priebus was chairman of the RNC, all thought this was irrecoverable. And, I mean, look, from the way it looked and was being portrayed on cable television, you can't really blame him for that coming to that conclusion. McConnell's take, and I was there in the room.
I remember this.
McConnell picked up the phone and called 3 candidates that we had in make or break races in order to get the majority, and said, what are you hearing on the ground? And all of the people said, I did rallies all day. This is late in October. These are rallies all day on the ground. Not a single person is talking about this stuff. They just want to beat the Democrats. They want to beat Hillary Clinton. Which confirmed his suspicion that a fractured Republican Party, regardless of the atmospherics in the national media, would cause irretrievable damage at the ballot box. And so his view was that you can't go anywhere from this guy, that you've got to figure it out and move forward as a team. Because politics is the ultimate team sport. If you're not a team, you never win. That's the reason why in the variety program we get angry when you get people taking shots and trying to undermine people like Kevin McCarthy when he's trying to just get you further down the road. Because it's the ultimate team sport. All it does is provide advantages for Democrats. That's what that did. And if you were to try to walk away from Donald Trump 2 weeks before an election, all you did is advantage Hillary Clinton. And so he told him, I'm not in. I'm not in on that. We're
not doing that.
We're not doing it.
And they were like, okay, I guess we're not doing it.
So it didn't go forward. Nobody knows that. This is the first time in the variety program it has ever been known that that was actually what happened, and that is what happened. And the rest is history on that. I'm not even sure Donald Trump knows that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know if he does.
Incredible insight.
I don't know if he does, but I remember it was in October, and it was.
I remember getting the calls. I
remember talking to him, and he was like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that."
I remember the debate after, which then they went and
our
got
team is on the field.
The women that Bill Clinton had assaulted.
Yeah. That was a hell of a play.
That was a play.
Right.
That was a hell of a play. But I mean, the point is a fractured doesn't work.
No.
And I think I wouldn't worry about that right now if I'm a Republican.
Republicans are going to consolidate.
I wouldn't worry about that. Like if you're concerned that Nikki Haley is the one that's preventing the Republican Party from consolidating, like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. What you ought to worry a lot about is if somebody like Nikki Haley isn't talking to a segment of the electorate that the Trump campaign isn't talking to at all, because that is a majority maker. That is the difference. Her constituency right now, and you saw it in New Hampshire, it's the difference between winning and losing. If those people are bought in, and if you listen to her remarks, 95% of them are against Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. If those people are not bought in to the arguments that she's making and nobody's talking to them, they're going to vote for Joe Biden. They just are. That's just the bottom line. Mm. And so I agree with what you said at some level. Like, this is making the Trump campaign stronger. Now, can this go forever? No, it can't. But the consolidation is inevitable. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen because Joe Biden is that bad. Mm-hmm. Democrats are that bad. The progressive movement is that bad. It is so divorced from middle America and the values of America and what we stand for that there's no chance that you're not going to have a consolidated conservative movement. What I worry a lot about is the people who aren't talked to, who have economic concerns with the Biden administration, that ultimately are fearful that the Republican Party doesn't represent anything they care about. Mm-hmm. Well, Nikki's talking to them right now. So it is what it is. Listen, we've got a bunch of other stuff. I'm glad we covered all that. By the way, I think that's inside. By the way,
that's something you don't get anywhere.
That's good insight.
Big news there too. Yeah. By the way, we'll see if anybody reports. They don't want to report on us though, because they would give us credibility, and they hate that. They hate that. So coming up, we're going to talk about the Zinn stuff.
Very important.
Chuck Schumer and the Zinn stuff, which is unbelievable. LA Times laying off their entire
I got
deal.
a lot to say about that.
And then we got Charlie Spiering as well. So let's get to it, fellas. The Zinn stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Zinn stuff.
Wild.
Fellas, Chuck Schumer said, and this is according to FoxNews.com, Schumer calls for a federal, this is so fucking wild, federal crackdown on Zinn nicotine pouches facing backlash. Nanny stayed alive and well. So he ultimately, Chuck Schumer, the leader of Senate Democrats, who, as you know, are constantly trying to figure out a way into your backyard.
Yep.
Has noticed, as I think anybody who's ever been to a convenience store in the last year has noticed, there's an awful lot of people buying nicotine pouches, whether they be Camel Snooze, whether they be Zinns, what have you. Well, he doesn't care for that. He doesn't care for that. And so he has decided that the federal government ought to outlaw the product. Zinns. I mean, what do we think about this?
So first off, among young males, this is probably the most unpopular thing you could, I can't think of a move that's more unpopular to do than this. For
I don't even understand why.
For so many reasons. You look at the alternatives. Is it basically just just smoke cigarettes, guys? Is that what the play is here? The same push that they had against
just go
vaping,
smoke conventional cigarettes.
Just smoke cigarettes, guys. And then the thing that really,
which by the way, that's cool too.
Yeah, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it. But what really gets me about this is that you have Chuck Schumer walks into a bodega and he's like, the problem is this pack of Zinns. Not that this place has been robbed 3 times and the person doesn't have to put cash bail up. That's not the problem here. The problem isn't Americans are worried about crime, that Americans are worried about inflation. It's that I'm going to go after Zinn.
Can we
get just such a gift.
Couple of graphics going? This is going to be graphic too in the Zinn memes. I mean, what you're seeing is this massive
Boston Zinn.
Yeah, for the folks who have not subscribed on YouTube yet, you get to miss out on stuff like this. So you definitely should subscribe. But that
just
is
a bunch of bros being bros.
I mean, the outrage I saw online immediately.
Yeah.
After this, because it's dude, inflation is so bad. We don't know which terror group is attacking our troops. We don't know what country is attacking who right now. A lot of folks don't know if they have a job tomorrow. They just want to have a Zinn, dude.
They want to take
and you're gonna take away
Can we get the next graphic?
That's it.
Yeah,
there it is.
William Wallace.
Standing
on top of a rock with a Zinn flag.
I mean, there is pretty much no move that's more unpopular among the youth than going after this, because it is just the levels of being out of touch with what actually matters to individuals.
But for those, so for those people who are and look, I've expressed my sincere consideration over the Trump poll numbers, his ceiling, his ability to get over the top against a cadaver. It's shit like this that I just fundamentally do not understand.
Wouldn't it rule if it was just juice turnout? Juice Republican turnout.
But they have this weird political radar on freedoms. It's wild. What they've done with menthol cigarettes.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
It's keeping an entire demographic less than interested and what it is that the Biden administration has to offer.
So the cigarette of choice of most African Americans who smoke cigarettes is menthol. So what does the Biden administration do this year in an election year? Ban menthol cigarettes. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, dude,
no, it's like
it's just a fundamental. Like, I don't understand what they're doing.
Not to mention a gigantic economic hit to a state like North Carolina, which Democrats would probably like to think is in play. But if he does this, Trump's going to win it going away, right? And then all of a sudden they're gonna ban Zins, and that activates an entirely just like a gigantic demographic.
Like, can
of
I get that?
Barstool
Can I
voters.
get graphic one back up? Can I get graphic one back up? So these fellas, these are our fellas, right? I mean, no, not that one. That's the poll. I'm talking about the Zin stuff, the Zin party. Wolf, can we get the Zin party back up? The dudes in the Zin party, they're our people,
That's it.
right? These are our guys. I mean, 2/3 of them probably listen to the variety program. The chances of them going out and putting out yard signs and delivering lit, I'll admit, probably not great.
Well, but now,
But you've given them a reason.
Now they've
right,
got an issue.
right?
Now you've given them a reason.
Every guy on that dock is going to have a yard sign, and they're going to be making 100 calls a person. Everybody's worried about consolidation. Chuck Schumer just solved that problem.
They just solved it.
I mean, you have a couple Zins, you know how many phone calls you can make?
I mean, these are our people. They're just knocking back a couple of White Claws and having a few Zinner Pops, a little upper deckies for the fellas. And next thing you know, the guy's trying to ban your
They're
stuff.
just trying to make it through Biden's America, for crying out loud.
That's the
You
thing.
know?
That's the thing. Is those are big losers. I remember I was reading this book in sociology about kind of like in inner cities, this understanding started to occur between police and just the working man, where if you have your beer in the brown bag, you get left alone.
Yeah.
Because here's the
interesting.
thing.
That's why people.
Because when you're
because
the working man, you know these are this is during you had manufacturing still in the United States, so you're
Yeah.
like in Milwaukee, you've done your shift, you just want to sit on your front porch. If you have a beer, you're gonna get hassled, but if you put it in the brown bag, the cops are like, we'll lay off you.
They're like,
Yeah,
look,
because,
this guy
he's
is
following the rules.
Right.
So
The spirit.
So
of the
you have
rules.
a time where like the youth of this country, what they had to go through during COVID,
Yeah.
locked up in the prime, when there should be socializing, we should be attending classes, when they should be enjoying their lives, we're locked up in a pandemic, and now they're in a country where housing is essentially an impossibility. They think they'll never be able to own a house.
They're certainly not getting Social Security or Medicare.
Never gonna see Social Security. They
can't
they're-
have a couple of lip pillows.
That's the thing. Is like they're surrounded by crime. It's like, you know what? Just a Zen to take the edge off. And so when you take that away from an individual, that's when you have problems politically.
I think we should rise up. We should probably let's get the old man to make some T-shirts on this.
That's a great idea.
I think
That
we
is
should.
a great idea.
The old man needs to put the stitching to some T-shirts because look, this is like legitimately unbelievable.
Yeah.
The idea that you're
It's
like
a gift. It's a gift to the Republicans.
focused on banning menthol cigarettes, or you're focused on taking away Zins, is like, dude, is anybody looking at what's happening
Yeah.
here? Like we've got like
That's not the top 200 issues.
we got trannies winning LGBT LPGA events.
Right. Oh,
I
yeah.
should
Oh,
say.
I saw that.
And like all of a sudden these guys like no. Our real concern is whether or not you get a little
It's unbelievable.
little knock of nicotine.
Yeah.
What a bunch of assholes! It's just incredible. One thing I wanted to cover because I think a lot of our listeners had been focused on this. It's not even in the doc, but you'll get interest in this. There was a Supreme Court ruling that dealt with the border and the sovereignty of Texas to put up fencing, and there was a majority decision against Texas being able to do something different than the federal government was willing to do. And from a policy standpoint, that is a hugely objectionable stance. I mean, something that's like, I'm sure Greg Abbott is like fit to be tied about. I saw something from the border agents that they were super irritated about it, and rightly so. Just remember, the Supreme Court is there if it's perfect, what it's there is to interpret the law. It's not to make policy.
Or enforce.
Or what it's there to do is to interpret the law as it's written. And the law as it's written is the sovereign borders of the United States are the property of the federal government, and states can't supersede that. In this case, that is a huge problem because the Biden administration has decided they're not going to do their job.
Yep.
If you look ahead to 18 months, you're going to be really fucking thankful for that decision.
That's so.
You're going to be really fucking
Well,
thankful.
I think that people in Texas are really thankful that they've got a governor who is actually moving on this, and
But I think my point is less about the issue of immigration, is to make people understand what the purpose of why it was so important for all of us for the last 20 years to get the Supreme Court right. In part was that you set precedent, not policy. That you make an understanding that people have to follow, that ultimately liberals get short-term wins on, that ultimately the Constitution is ensured they're going to get their fucking asses kicked.
That's the thing is, I was enraged when I saw this because this border is open. And the mess is completely at the behest of the Biden administration. They enjoy it. They want this. They've completely, given up their role in defending the sovereignty of the United States and making the border secure. And so what this goes back to is square one. Where we're at is the Biden administration has abdicated their role in defending this country's border.
Well, think about the fact that they challenged it in the first place. You think they would be saying thank you to the Texas National Guard.
Because that would take the off
right.
of Kamala's plate, who's
Right.
the border czar, right?
Right.
But where they are now is, okay, so the entire border crisis is on the Biden administration.
Yeah.
It's completely clear. I think Governor Abbott has done a phenomenal job
he's-
putting illegal aliens on buses and sending them to communities that say, oh, well, we are a sanctuary community, but what that means is, Texas, you deal with the problem, not us, right? Yeah. So when they get sent to New York and then all of a sudden it's a crisis for Mayor Adams and he has to understand what it's like for those border towns in Texas every single day, that's the issue at heart here. And so I understand exactly what you said right there is this will crystallize in the view of the American public that the Biden administration is enabling and wants this crisis at the border.
But also, like, the court's job is not to make policy.
Which is
Right.
frustrating. Which is
Or
frustrating.
Or enforce the law, which is the Biden administration's job. It's their
Exactly.
job is to enforce
the enforcing of the law is the political part. The larger part is that they set standards by which everyone has to live by in terms of interpreting the law going forward. Okay. Now you get a Trump administration.
the law. Right.
Okay, so you got a liberal governor of New Mexico.
Right.
Wants
Right.
a liberal governor of California.
Right.
They have a bunch of different ideas about how they want to enforce border policy. Guess
Right.
what? Supreme Court just said, you can't.
You have to listen to the Trump administration.
You can't.
And you have to build the wall that he tells you have.
You're
to
going
build.
to build that fucking wall.
Right. Right. No, I think
You know what I mean? And like that's
what you're saying.
That's
What you're
the
saying.
long game.
What you're saying is exactly right, and that is the long game. But right now, when we are facing month over month inflows of 300,000 people, I just like that the governor of a state
I
is
agree.
actually using his authority. And
Well,
I
no,
think
you should
it's,
go-
I
you
think
should
it's
push the
ironic.
limits.
I think it's ironic that all
They
these
have to fight it.
politicians around the country have perfectly good sets of legs, and it's a guy in a wheelchair who's actually standing up to Washington.
Oh, wow. Look
There you
at
go.
you. Look at you. All right. Speaking of border, do we have a bear? Can we put the bear up? Boys, you're not going to believe this. Look at this bear.
That's at the wall.
So, I don't. This is obviously
what side
one
is that bear on?
one of Hank's lieutenants. What's unclear is what side of the wall it's on. It clearly wants to cross. It's deterred. Can we get one more time? Well, if I want to see it one more time, this bear is
Again, for folks who are just listening, this is why you get on.
Yeah, you can't get through.
It's trying to get through Trump's wall, and it's looking, and it's trying to get. It's looking. It can't do it.
Not working.
I mean, honestly,
Walls work. Turns out.
it's a bear. You should try looking for coyote for that job, right? Like, you remember when this
slip
administration tried playing dumb, being like a coyote?
Yeah, that's
Like
animals.
that's an animal.
That was-
Those aren't bringing. They're not riding. Migrants are not riding coyotes.
Shows you how little they know
That's.
about
I
all
mean,
this
this
shit.
just. It's unbelievable.
Do we know? Is that an American bear or a Mexican bear? Because I think we.
Okay.
That's an American bear.
Maybe
Maybe
patrolling the wall.
Yeah, maybe he's watching the wall.
Maybe he's what? Maybe that's
Someone's
a new
got
tattoo?
to.
Taking it into
Honestly,
onto his,
You think Abbott's
New
got
idea for Abbott.
Abbott's like you're not
Send in
gonna
the bears.
You're not gonna let me put up the fencing, so here's the bear.
Yeah, send in the bears.
Abbott has allied with Hank.
Honestly, if Biden won't do it, send in the bears.
Get Hank and the crew involved. I love it.
Crocodiles in the Rio Grande.
Smug. Last thing, you'll be saddened to know that the LA Times is laying off practically all of their staff.
I've enjoyed the hell out of this news so much.
It turns out it's not good.
So it's a massive portion of their staff. I was so excited seeing this news. They're crying about, LA Guild, our union, we all stand in solidarity. The union did shit for them, right? The same way that Sports Illustrated's union did shit for them. Here's the lesson, folks. Okay, all you LA Times reporters, I know I've tweeted at many of you the same message that I'm going to say right now is keep writing stories saying that the Biden economy is great and the campaign just isn't doing a good job telling voters that everything is going great. Even while you're unemployed, write that same story. Tweet it out. Do the same garbage that you've been doing. How much are you buying that story right now? You know, it's like that whole, what's that joke? It's like a recession when your neighbor gets laid off. It's a depression when you get laid off. How's their depression going now? How are things in El Segundo? You moved to El Segundo for this.
20%.
20%.
20% of the workforce, gonzo.
And you know what?
Did you notice that,
cut
by the
more,
way?
Cut way more. Cut way more.
Smash, you notice that? So the LA Times has never been like an awesome publication in terms of coverage for American politics.
But they've had some good reporters.
But they've had some good reporters. And over the years,
No, they haven't.
over the years,
Not one.
no, they have.
Not
but
one has walked through that door. They've all been just regime puppets who've pushed this message, being like, why don't voters understand that Joe Biden's economy is great? Why don't you guys understand that right now? How's that feeling?
So I think,
feeling good?
But I noticed they did like there was some kind of a takeover. Some billionaire's daughter.
Right.
Yeah. Some billionaire bought it, and then he let his daughter run the place. And so his daughter is a socialist. This is the best story ever.
But I noticed like the moment that happened, all of a sudden it was like DNC talking points. Like normally
She forced them to do things like stop calling homeless people homeless, called them unhoused. Like these are the things that she started worrying about.
most of the reputable publications, quote unquote reputable, do you the courtesy of trying to mask their true partisanship a touch, just a touch, right? They'll give you a quote or whatever, or the story will be like, well, it's a legitimate public policy debate. And like immediately after this broad took over, it was a complete 180.
Yep.
I mean, everything that they printed, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like you literally, I know, like I'll look at the byline of the reporter and like no one I know has ever met them. And they're writing like with authority about what's happening in American politics, despite the fact that no one's ever talked to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, lo and behold, 20%. Now you're homeless.
That's
Sorry.
I mean, I could not be happier because these are the people who've been trying to tell Americans, listen, inflation is not real. Or then they went with the Biden talking point, well, inflation is actually good. And then they went with, well, inflation's gone. Like they've spent their careers being stenographers for the Biden administration, pushing these talkers that, listen, don't care. Don't believe your lying eyes. Everything is fine. Is everything fine for those people now? They deserve
Right.
this and so much worse.
Right. Fundamentally, people buy newspapers and spend their precious time reading them because they're looking for information. They're not looking for propaganda.
Bingo.
They're not looking to be deprogrammed
Yep.
from whatever their life is. They just want information. They want the weather and the news version of the weather and the news version of sports. And, like, that's it.
And I love
That's all.
the biggest irony of all of this
If
is
they want to read an editorial, they'll flip to the back, but usually they don't do that.
the biggest stimulus that the field of journalism ever received in its existence is the election of Donald Trump. Like, that was the journo hiring spree. Like, they never had it better.
They never had
These
it better.
publications never got more subscribers, more page views than the Donald Trump presidency.
That's
And
my
then at
only
the end-
objection to the 4 years, by the way.
Well, that's the thing is then they all are just having the best time of their lives, and then they decide, let's unite and elect Joe Biden. Let's put a barricade on the Hunter Biden laptop. Or let's unite and make sure that Joe Biden wins. And look what it's led to.
Do you think
Look
the
what it's
rent?
led to. They all deserve this and so much more. Like this guy Orrin McIntyre has a great line of, "You think you hate journos enough, but you don't," and that's the truth.
Smug, if Trump wins in November, do you think the Renaissance comes back?
I think so. I mean, the guys. We saw what he did for the economy.
I don't
last
know.
time.
I don't know.
Yep, the hiring will be
I think
nuts.
You think they're done?
I think that they've poisoned the well enough.
Yeah.
I think that
I hope so.
There are other options out there for information beyond the
And for the
old
journos, learn to
news.
code. You told coal miners to do that. Learn
well,
to code.
you know what? You can just keep subscribing to the Ruthless Friday program. Tell us everything you need, and we can keep expanding and providing more information.
There you
That's
go.
right. That's exactly
right.
right.
I want to welcome to the program a good friend, somebody we've had on here before, and somebody we've worked with for, God, it's been like decades.
I have never been on the show.
I thought you were on here last. You were here.
No, I did stop by to see the old studio.
Oh, is that
back
what it
when
was?
had
That's what it was.
The old barn studio.
You came in and met with us.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is the first time on air.
Yes, it is. I'm very happy to be
Well, it
here.
looks a little
Thanks for
different
having
from
me.
the last time you were here,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
a lot warmer too.
You know
Those
what?
bright lights.
Blame Wolf for that. He's got a fetish for the heat, and I can't figure it
yeah.
out. And look at you as a professional.
Oh,
Suit and tie.
Couldn't disappoint. Last time I met you, you were wearing a suit. You were
You,
kind of well dressed. So.
Well, yeah, occasionally I need to do real life things. This is not one of those times. This
That's
is one of those
great.
times where I'm actually doing fun stuff. Charlie Spiering, longtime journalist we've worked with for years, did incredible work at Breitbart. Before that, you were at NRO, was it? Or
the Washington Examiner.
Washington
actually,
Examiner?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, truly insightful stuff. The kind of guy that actually gets it, goes into the detail, tries to find the research, doesn't write what the assignment editor is like conjuring up on a day-to-day basis, but actually finds the
thank you.
real story.
And I even showed up, and Smug didn't have a buffet set for me. So
I know. I know. And I think you've only written one hit piece on me, which is a kind of a huge distinction between you and every other journalist in this squad. But I got to tell you, this is a truly good guy, and you've written an incredible book that we have a lot of interest in.
thanks.
This is the sucker here. It's Amateur Hour.
Yeah.
Amateur Hour. And who it's about is one of our favorite targets in the variety program, Kamala Harris.
That's right. Yeah, it was kind of a blend. When we were putting together the idea for the book, we kind of wanted, it's kind of terrifying that she's sort of a brain stroke away from the presidency, but it's also kind of funny. Her first 3 years have been kind of funny, and you guys have done a lot you've had a lot of laughs, haven't you?
Well, Veep or Veep,
Yeah.
that was a fun game.
What a great game.
Yeah, exactly. And for the first 4 months of her vice presidential tenure, it was a game that we could not resist. The problem is we ran out of Selena Meyer quotes. Because, as you know, if you're listening to the show and you've listened back then, what we would do is match up a quote from the real life vice president with a Selena Meyer of the show Veep quote, which of course was supposed to be a comedic parody. And you'd have to pick which one was which. The problem is there were so many of them. We literally went through 7 years of Veep in the first 3 months.
Oh, wow.
And we just kind of ran out.
She
But
does
Kamala-
not stop saying amateur hour kind of stuff. It's very aptly named.
She's the gift that keeps on giving.
So, look, I know what gave you the idea, right? She exists. She's a very significant public figure, critical to our political discussion at this point in time, and an absolute amateur hour, which the title of the book is perfect.
Thank you.
But when did you get to the point where you were like, no, I'm going to put pen to paper on this deal?
Yeah, when just investigating the first 3 years, kind of putting it together, and then doing the research. Well, wow, when you go back. So I went in the 2016 primary for Democrats. I primarily followed Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
And I didn't really follow Kamala Harris's campaign that
That's
much.
right. You were totally on Pete.
Yeah, I was covering Pete the whole time.
We call him Boot Pete-a-Judge here in the program.
Yeah. So, but I never really followed Kamala Harris's campaign that closely, and just going back and doing the research. Wow, the signs were all there. Where were the reporters? Why didn't they point out the obvious problems that she was having? Now, look, her campaign famously crashed and burned in Iowa before the caucus even started. So,
I mean, she was like an early front runner.
And that's a waste of $40 million from her donors. Like, didn't even get it to the starting line, let alone the
Right.
So that's rough. And yeah, just going back and watching all the old interviews, and then we know of like the famous moments of the campaign, but looking at some of the other stuff, it's incredible how she got as far as she did.
So, a lot of rumor and innuendo, as they say.
Yeah.
About how she sort of rose through California politics. Some of them involving former Mayor Willie Brown.
As soon as you announced this book, I was like, okay, are we going to get to the bottom? I'll say like the whole Willie Brown thing. We can just say the Willie Brown thing.
Willie
Brown
Brown
The
thing.
whispers of like, okay, how did she get to where because she essentially she had the Senate seat handed to her in California through like a vacancy, right?
I mean,
like,
she worked her way up, right? I mean,
that's the thing is like, how does this happen?
But how does she arrive? California, it's basically a one-party state. Got to be a pretty competitive thing.
And so there would always be these rumors of like, oh, her and Willie Brown, like he's their benefactor, maybe more. What's the whole story with that relationship situation?
So I left a voicemail for Willie Brown, but he did not respond to an interview request. But we did sort of do some research.
I love picturing Willie Brown getting a voicemail from you, and I can imagine the questions you asked on the voicemail, and him just sort of sitting there and being like, I really want to answer.
I would love.
He had the reputation when he was a politician, full time, of always returning every call from every reporter.
Oh, really?
Even if he declined to make a comment,
he would call
return the
back.
Call.
Yeah.
So I kind of hoped he would, but I guess
This one was
Kamala's
a little
people
hot.
kind of have him blocked down about
It was a little hot.
Yeah.
So what would you find out about that whole situation?
Willie Brown dated Kamala Harris when she was just an assistant district attorney from Alameda County. So
Okay.
she was 29 years old. Willie Brown is the most powerful politician in California at this point. He ruled the state legislature for years, and he was finally forced out because of term limits. And he kind of wants to keep the thing going. He wants to keep living the high life. He's very playboy, fun-loving. He loves fast cars and expensive suits. He loves the lifestyle. Little corrupt around the edges, but the FBI never caught him doing anything bad, right?
Yeah,
So
for
he's
those of you who
running
don't
for
remember
mayor.
the Willie Brown era, it was, he was a national figure as a mayor of San Francisco, in large part because of exactly what you're saying. He was like a quote-a-minute machine, loved being in front of a camera.
Oh, yeah.
And loved just sort of living the life out in the public.
Bill Clinton called him the real Slick Willie.
Wow. Wow.
Perfect. So she dated this guy.
So they date for about a year, and at the same time, he's running for mayor. He kind of needs to show the public that he can hold a stable relationship with a real adult.
Yeah.
Even if it's Kamala Harris half his age.
Right.
Because he's been long estranged from his wife Blanche for many years. They separated but never divorced. So this is why people, obvious operatives are saying she had an affair with a married man.
Yeah.
So,
but kind of.
yeah, kind of. But they were estranged. But it wasn't just any ordinary relationship. Willie Brown appoints her to 2 state boards while they're dating.
Really?
She's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think I researched. It's like $400,000 by being on these boards in a period of 3 to 4 years.
Whoa.
And, that was back in the 90s.
and
You adjust that
so
for
she's like in
inflation,
her
that's like $800,000.
And at 29.
She's in her 20s.
At the age, and he gave her the keys to a BMW. And here you go.
Whoa.
Here you go, babe. Look good.
This is insane.
Didn't know that.
Well, she figured it out.
So, yeah, just by hanging out, they only dated a year. She came out after his victory speech and put on a cap on his head that said "Duh Mayor" in gold letters and gave him a big kiss. And it was everyone was like, oh my gosh, they might get married. This is looking pretty serious. But nope, soon after, right after the campaign, Brown dumps her. And guess who's holding the Bible at the inauguration? His long-estranged wife.
Whoa. Blanche.
Yeah.
Wow.
I bet Blanche has stories to tell.
Oh, yeah.
You leave her a voicemail?
Yeah, did she return reporter calls?
Oh, man. I think they actually got her on camera once after Kamala was elected. She's just like, no, I'm not.
She declined.
Yeah.
Declined comment.
Well, Charlie, fast forward to modern day, and Democrats are now in a situation where they're like, my God, this woman is our vice president. If something should happen to Joe Biden, she is the standard bearer heading into November. We've seen story after story of them on background, of course, wringing their hands about the possibility that she might be on the ballot for them if something should happen to the president. Can you talk a little bit about the anxiety Democrats are feeling about the chance that Kamala Harris may be on the ballot in November?
Yeah, they don't want that at all. I found it pretty amazing that there's few people in Washington that even like Kamala Harris.
Wow.
Let alone even Democrats, let alone defend her. And
Really?
part of that is that she has so many other Democrats in the wings who have supporters like Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren, and
Right.
There's any number of candidates people would rather see. They've kind of seen all they wanted to see from Kamala Harris, so they don't really like her and they don't really stick their neck out to defend her. But you know what they won't do? They won't publicly criticize her because, as soon as you do that, you're a sexist, you're a racist. Get out of here. You're not suitable for Democrat politics.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of frustration behind the scenes, a lot of anxiety.
Because in large part because of the criteria that Biden put in place for who he would select.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
He vowed he would select a true partner who would be ready on day one.
Yeah, and this was but heavy influence, as he did with the Supreme Court, on checking the Democrat identity boxes.
Right. There was a debate, one of the last debates he had with Bernie Sanders. He said, I will commit that I will pick a woman vice president.
Yeah.
But after the Summer of Rage and the George Floyd riots, it became pretty clear to his senior advisors that, he has to pick a woman of color. He has to pick a black woman to be his vice presidential nominee because the old Joe just isn't quite getting cut anymore on the campaign trail. After all of his campaign gaffes, poor kids are just as smart as white kids.
He's not an exact.
You ain't black if you if you vote for Trump. They're like, gosh, this guy, he's a terrible messenger. We need somebody who can actually message on the issue of race, and who better to do it than a black woman? But yeah, Barack Obama.
After she called
also,
him racist.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
The one that called him a racist.
Yeah.
She's the one that's gonna.
And she happily accepted
Yeah.
that nomination from the racist that she called.
It's wild to me because if he's going to make that statement, there are of course millions of qualified people to choose from, including Karen Bass and Val Demings. If you're a Democrat looking for somebody to be a vice presidential nominee, did you pick up anything about regret that they didn't pick Karen Bass or Val Demings or somebody other than Kamala Harris?
Well, one of the big ones was the fact that he was seriously considering Susan Rice. I think a lot of us were kind of watching
Susan
that.
Rice, right.
Rice
was Obama official.
Was Jill's favorite.
Okay.
So former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, the famous one who took the fall for Benghazi, getting all that messaging totally wrong.
Right.
Wow, how did she make it to the top of the list? We were kind of like, whoa, really? And the reason was Jill liked her, and Biden had a relationship with her, just a friendly relationship. They got along well.
I mean,
and they
from
worked
the
in-
Obama
from-
administration.
From the Obama administration. Yeah. And so that's why he seriously considered Susan Rice.
And got beat out by Willie Brown's girlfriend.
So
That's right.
I have a question about this. So, it's many times in the press, it's been said how much the Biden campaign folks, the Kamala campaign folks, they didn't really like each other. Like you mentioned, a lot of folks in D.C. Democrats don't like Kamala. Is she aware of this? Is she oblivious, or does she know that? Well, she's not wanted at all.
Yeah, I think she's kind of viewing it through the lens of this is what the Democrat Party does. They lift up people of color and then just kind of leave them dangling.
She's really blaming. That's what she's.
Yeah,
incredible.
And so she's just kind of waiting it out. You kind of see and now that her campaign, she's in campaign mode, right? They hired a bunch of people to get her out of vice president mode and put her in campaign mode. You know, everything she says, like things she said on The View, things she said with Katie Couric, completely scripted. I love Gen Z. Laugh. I love Gen Z. I really love Gen Z. This is the kind of rhetoric that she's using now to appeal to young people,
which is so hysterical. That's my favorite part about her is that she has some talent, if completely outside of the world of politics. Like, I think if you were to encounter her at a party, like, it probably wouldn't be as weird as it is when you're looking at her through a camera lens. But, like, the moment they flip lights on, her entire... I mean, you remember the famous, like, NASA...
Yeah.
Where they had to script the kids to ask her questions about space, and she talked about how great space... Like, everything seems... That was, like, a perfect encapsulation for me of her, in that it's like, no, you need to say this. And she's like, I will say this, words, this, words. Isn't that kind of like the upshot of her?
Yeah, you keep her on script because if she's just riffing, then it just becomes a word salad, like we call it. You know, everyone's talking about her word salads, and there's a chapter of the book just highlighting some of her best ones. Yeah. But a lot of the reason she does this is she kind of loses her place, and she keeps adding more and more dependent clauses to everything that she's saying.
Amazing.
This is good research.
This is the observation.
This is good research.
Yeah.
And she also does this thing where, like, says a term and then tries to define the term. And I think maybe this is bad media training. I don't know if you guys have run into this, but maybe in media training, they're like, come up with an idea, a word, and then sort of build your speech around this word to really connect with the audience. You know, you can kind of see a coach saying that. And that's why she says time, and talks about the significance of the passage of time.
Oh, God, that was a horrible
That was, I mean, if a coach ever said that to her, that coach should be fired. I mean, there are some people who are capable of extemporania, and she is certainly not one of them.
I think that's why there's a steady rotation of speech writers, because no matter who comes up with a speech, it's just not working. I think that she's on at least her third. And people have told me, like, no, she's been through more than that. But as far as we know on record,
incredible.
Like, she's on her third speech.
Do you think it's
in 3 months?
Do you think, Charlie, like in all the research that you've done, do you think it's like a deep-seated insecurity?
Yeah, good question. Like, what is
or do you think it's just? I mean, like I find it almost impossible to believe that she's just stone dumb, but it could be. Or it could be just a series of insecurities.
I mean, she's like a Harvard lawyer or something. Where does she
right.
go
I mean, it's hard to believe that she doesn't have some
went
capacity.
to Howard University here in D.C., and then she went, I think, to one of the California schools. So
yeah,
she's not certainly Harvard or Yale. She's not that much of an elitist. But, you know, I think a lot of it is just fear of messing up. I think that, you know, you have politicians that are afraid of messing up, and especially when you're the vice president and you're trying to speak somebody else's words that aren't your own. Yeah, I think she really struggles with that, especially in the beginning. Yeah, you know, unable to answer a question without the talking points. There's so many
Biden
shows.
did her a lot of favors, being like, "Hey, you're in charge of the border. Good luck."
She hated that idea that she was somehow the borders are. Yeah, she even corrected him in public. You know, I think it was Jonathan Martin, one of the Politico reporters, that teased this out. But in one instance, she actually corrected the president publicly in front of other lawmakers. Like, I am not in charge of the border. I'm in charge of root causes of migration.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God.
What a lunatic.
Can you imagine?
You would think that someone who makes so many mistakes over and over and over again would just be comfortable with making mistakes and be like, okay, well, whatever.
He has to take that. The same trap that got her the VP nomination.
Well, the question is whether he even heard it, right? It was just like,
yeah. But I mean, that she clearly is conscious of kind of like the armor that she has, that grants her the leeway to act like that? Is she like even self-conscious enough to understand why she's vice president in the first place? That like she didn't make it to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Her resume is non-existent because all of her positions she's essentially been appointed to.
Mm-hmm.
Or does she really think, you know what, I'm just a person of destiny. I've earned my
That's a
way
good
this
question.
entire way.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of ambition there, and she wouldn't have gotten as far as she did without the ambition. She always but in California, you don't have to necessarily go in front of voters and convince them to vote for you. Your number one job is to convince the elite, right?
Yeah.
In California, you need to impress the donors, the young ones and the old ones, right? And then you also need to impress the celebrities. So by having her position in San Francisco, she was rolling with all the top donors, all the top celebrities, all the reporters even, and sort of she learned the political machine. Show up, demand a seat at the table, and they're going to hand it to you. And so she did that very well. That worked well in California, and her and Gavin Newsom were sort of facing a real clash as they were looking for the next governor. And then lo and behold, Barbara Boxer steps down.
It's a great point, Charlie, because what it takes to rise in California politics is an insider's machine game. It doesn't have anything to do with like talking to voters and trying to get people what it is that they're wanting from their government. You just placate the celebs and the rich people enough to rise up in the Dem Party and hope that you can
It's
take
democratic
center
politics
stage.
in a nutshell these days.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And she really wowed everybody, and everybody was, and the national media was talking about her as the next Obama. They viewed her through that lens.
100%, I remember
Even when
that.
she kicked off her campaign, a lot of donors and party elites considered her the next Obama. Wow, until she set foot in Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
That was real culture shock.
Right.
So
And-
she'll blame racism and sexism of Iowans, for never getting ahead. Towards the end of her campaign, she was just like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Everybody's so sexist and so racist, and I'll never make it.
Right.
They'll never elect a woman president of the United States. But, yeah, I think most people knew that it was something more.
So in all of the research that you did, all of the interviews, what do you think is the most surprising thing that you learned about her?
Yeah,
Because we all see her as like this weird robot, but from everything that you've seen, what's the Kamala Harris that none of us have known?
Yeah, I guess it's what I mentioned earlier, just how few Democrats like her and how she's just really kind of waiting them out. She's like, I know you don't like me, but I'm here.
But you can't get rid of me.
You can't get rid of me without angering your base. You can't replace me.
Wow.
So she's literally waiting Joe out. If he gets reelected, and, Nikki Haley, I think, is the one that sort of hammers this home. This isn't an election for President Joe Biden. This is an election for President Kamala Harris. And, wow, she could take power without ever running through another election, never going back to Iowa again.
And that's how you think that's how they view the world. That's how
I
she
think
views
how
it.
she views it, yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Look, if you look at Joe Biden, who thought Joe Biden would ever win as president of the United States? He was a laughingstock. He was a joke in Washington during the Obama years.
Totally.
So if you look at that, she has to wonder, like, if I just wait him out, I can prove them all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, he's
I just-
82,
yeah.
right? He's got there's just a number of things that are quite obvious to the naked eye that would lead you to believe that someone is probably not able to do another 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's basically her calculation.
Right.
Is you can't get rid of me because to do that will be to get rid of your base.
Right. That's why Gavin Newsom ultimately had to back down. He was
Ah,
out there
fascinating.
parroting around in the primary, and then finally they were like, "Okay, cut it out. You're done. You've had
Right.
your fun." He sort of backed down and
Rich white guy not allowed.
So that's going to be the thing. If Joe Biden doesn't make it to Election Day, which Trump is openly talking about, predicting, like, I don't think he makes it.
Yeah.
What happens to this party if Kamala has to step in for Joe?
Your takeaway from all of this is that it's a fait accompli, that it's her,
Yeah.
and it is what it is.
Or there's enough donors in the party. This is during the campaign, right? If Joe doesn't make it till Election Day, it's going to be absolute chaos. Everyone's going to want to be the next candidate. There's going to be donors with money coming out of their pockets freaking out. We can't have Kamala. We need you. We need you, Pete. Time to get in there. We need you. Liz Warren, we need you in there.
What a perfect description as to why it is that they are making Joe Biden run for re-election.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They know Kamala can't win, can't beat Trump at this point. So he has to run again.
Yeah, it's they have to. And you also can't open the top on that progressive discussion in this environment.
Right.
And hope to compete.
Right.
Ah, it's so good.
Incredible, so good.
It's so good. Listen, Charlie Spiering, thank you for doing this. Thank you for writing this book. Amateur Hour, we can get it anywhere?
Yeah.
Anywhere
books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold, you should get it. I can't wait to read this. I'm bringing it home tonight. Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me.
Listen, we're going to be back next week with King of the Hill. Duncan, obviously, is in absence today, which we very much regret. But the old man's voice is very important in that game. So we're going to postpone it to next week. And I don't know, maybe we'll throw in another game or something, have a little fun.
Yeah, we'll
Great
see.
idea.
You know? Buddy, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. Thank you so much for Charlie. Get that book, Amateur Hour. No better title. So, until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.